Welcome to Music Matters 2020. Thank you so much for joining our new and unique podcast community where we discuss the relevant issues in classical music today as seen through the eyes of distinguished colleagues. And we're delighted that you can join us. Please remember to subscribe on YouTube, like our video, and hit that bell for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. Here on Music Matters 2020, we take you behind the curtain on these conversations. In my 25 years as a conductor, music director, music educator, college professor, and artistic administrator, my conversations with my colleagues are some of the most important moments in my career where we take new ideas, new collaborations form, ideas and concepts crystallize, and it's just amazing times. And here we take you behind the curtain for that. Today we have a wonderful soprano. This is Allison Charney, who's had a wonderful career as a spinto soprano, singing many of the roles of Puccini with the most distinguished opera companies in the country. and we're going to discuss her more recent her innovation as the founder of PREformances with Allison Charney, which is in its 11th season, I believe, and has been a wonderful concert series, and now has been housed at Merkin Concert Hall, a prestigious concert hall in New York City. So welcome, Allison Charney. Thank you for joining us on Music Matters 2020.
It's so nice to be here with you, Jason. Although I have to admit, I wish we were together in person.
Well, soon enough. It's always a pleasure being with you and to hear what you're working on and to see the wonderful artists you bring on your concert series and the new commissions that you've commissioned. And it's you have such a great spirit of collaboration with what you do, and it's wonderful to watch these programs form.
Well, I'm enjoying the pivot, I think, that has happened because of COVID. I don't know if you want to jump to that. But I certainly there's nothing better than the collaboration that has to exist in a career in the arts. That's certainly something that keeps me nourished and sustained, whether it's in person or virtual. And it's certainly one of the highlights, I think, of having a career like this.
So tell me about your career as a singer. You had you've sung all the big heroines in the Puccini repertoire. Tell us a bit about your performing and how you went into performing. Did you always know you wanted to be a singer?
I think I did. I think I started on their career path really young. A singer takes a little bit longer to develop. So it wasn't really until high school that I was pretty confident this was the path I was on. And I certainly sang in all the musicals in high school. And my first voice teacher, Jane Campbell, really took me under her wing. And she knew that I was going to be an opera singer, even if I didn't quite get it at the time. And so she really steered me in the right direction. And then I took a sort of unusual route. I didn't go straight to music conservatory. I went to college, to liberal arts college. I went to Harvard. And I did create a way to have music in my take a voice lesson in New York City. I had opportunities at school to make music with colleagues and my great mentor. Then there, I finally settled on music, and I went to Peabody Conservatory for 2 graduate degrees, and that is where I really committed to becoming an opera singer at the time.
So we're having a little bit of connectivity issues here. I just want to make sure we go back over that 1 second. So in your time at Harvard, which is, of course, the elite, wonderful, college, liberal arts college, with so many great musicians there. I know there's such a tradition with Bernstein and so many wonderful artists. What was it like studying there, and how were you able to balance your academics with your musical studies?
Well, certainly when I was at Harvard, there was no such thing as any sort of a performance major. So if you wanted to actually make music, that was something you did on your own or extracurricularly. And nor was I a music concentrator. That's what they call a major there. I developed my own concentration that was guided by Professor Louise Veskershyn, who was a great pianist, musician, mentor, educator. And she sort of steered me through my very unusual path at Harvard. And I studied voice in New York City, and I would go to the city once a week for a voice lesson.
So after college, you went to, after your undergraduate, you went to the Peabody Conservatory, one of the elite schools for performers. And I see here that you were a grand finalist in the Metropolitan Opera Competition in New York City. And what was it like to be on the stage in that major competition?
It was pretty cool. Actually, I was thinking about so when you do that Met competition, there are several rounds. You compete at the district level and then at the regional level. And if you keep winning, you make it to the national level in New York. And when I sang in the regional finals, they recorded that for the public radio station. I was in the Southeast region at that time. And I will never forget that in the recording of my aria, which helped me win the competition, at the very end of the recording on radio, preserved forever, there's that moment, when a piece ends and there's silence and then people express their appreciation and applaud. Except in this case, there's that moment when there should have been silence, and instead of silence, you hear a really loud woohoo! And it's clearly my mom. It was exciting for her too.
It certainly is a family. When you have a career in the arts, it's certainly a family endeavor. So your parents must have been very supportive all the way through, and to watch you succeed makes us as parents just as happy. And I know you're a mom as well, so we certainly can relate to watching our kids do good things.
That's for sure. I understand the woohoo a little bit better now.
So tell me about the birth of PREformances and what started the production aspect of what you do.
Well, actually, it is very much related to my becoming a mother. So, as you well know, Jason, because I know your crazy travel schedule back in the land before dystopia, I was on the road about 10 and a half months of the year singing operas all over the country. And as you might imagine, that's not a perfect match with raising a family. And so when my husband and when we got married and then we had our two boys, I took a real pause in my performing career. And then I was about to start up again. I had gotten an engagement to sing with the Philadelphia Orchestra that my manager, who is your manager also, Peter Ramsman, was really awesome to get for me, especially since I'd been taking a pause. And as you also well know, in this career, there's often not a lot of money. And even an orchestra as prestigious as the Philadelphia Orchestra only had enough in the budget for one rehearsal prior to the concert. And that rehearsal was the same day as the concert. And so for my big debut with Philadelphia Orchestra, I only had this one shot. And the whole time, as I was getting ready, I thought, this is really stupid. I should have done something ahead of time, maybe in front of friends, just to put a little pressure on me so that when I go to my first rehearsal, my one and only rehearsal with the Philadelphia Orchestra, I'm not as nervous and I can just relax and enjoy singing with the orchestra. So I had that in the back of my head. And a few days before I was going to go to Philadelphia, we had parent-teacher conferences at nursery school. And I went to the parent-teacher conference and I lost my cell phone. I left my cell phone behind in the cab. And when I finished the parent-teacher conference, I knew I didn't have my cell phone. And there was all this panic. And my phone got a phone call from the person who had found the cell phone. And he reached my husband and found it was the head of the JCC of Manhattan, Rabbi Joy Levitt. I went to pick up my cell phone from Joy Levitt, and I said to her, I'm so relieved you found my phone because I'm going off to work and I haven't been away from my children really, and I would have been so anxious about my phone. What do you do? Blah, blah, blah. So it came out that I was an opera singer and I was going to sing with the Philadelphia Orchestra. And she said, oh my God, and you live in the neighborhood here. You should have done that here first. That's so weird. I had this idea that I want to that came to me because of this, because I felt I needed a place to do it first, that maybe my friends who are top artists in the field would also like an opportunity to try something out before they have to do it on the big stage. And I think I'm going to do it in my apartment, and I'm just going to host sort of a musicale and have people come over. And she said, not in your apartment, you're going to do it here. And so PREformances was really born, and it was incubated and nourished at the JCC. And then finally I moved it to Merkin Concert Hall.
I remember seeing a couple of the performances at the JCC. It was an intimate experience, and that's translated beautifully to Merkin Hall, which is obviously a prestigious concert hall and a venue where great music happens. But you've really maintained the feel that you established at the JCC in the next chapter, which is really wonderful to see.
I try really hard to. One of the missions, in addition to having these top level artists try something out that they're going to do somewhere else, is to break down the traditional barrier that exists between a classical music audience and a classical music performer. And so I do try really hard to get that intimate feeling. And one of the ways I do it is I sing on each of the concerts, but I also have guest artists, and I speak to the guest artists, and you, Jason, have been one of the guest artists. But I speak to the guest artists before they perform, and I asked them not to tell us that Mozart was born in 1756 and died in 1791, but instead to share their personal reaction to the Mozart that they're about to play or sing, and talk about maybe challenges that might exist for them in the music. And what I've summed it up as is I'm looking for ungoogleable insights into the music to share with the audience.
That's such a great, taking us, there's so much mystique around classical music. I think now more than ever, we have to bring new people into the concert hall. And I think that things like what you're doing are such a great way to get people hooked on seeing these artists in those prestigious venues, but first getting to know them as people, because when you get to know someone as a person, it's so much more engaging to watch them do what they do. So really is a wonderful opportunity for people to get really into new artists and new pieces.
Well, and as I like to remind the audience, they're usually on any 90-minute long performances in the hall, now that they're on 30 minutes long. But they're usually anywhere from 3 to 5 guest artists. And so everybody performs just a little bit. And so I remind the audience, if you don't like what you're hearing now, just hang tight. It's only, 5 minutes and you'll get another another offering. So just relax and, wait for, you cannot love everything and still appreciate it.
I say a very similar thing about when I conduct Carmina Burana. If you don't like one movement, it's like channel surfing. The next one comes and it's totally different.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Wonderful. So tell me about some of the artists you've had on there. And I know I did perform there. It was a delight to get to be on there and to work with your father, who is a accomplished actor, film actor, and television actor. And a very, that piece we did together was a heart-rending piece, and it's still one of the most profound things I've done. But to get to do it up there was real. That was the first time I've conducted Schoenberg anywhere. So to get to do it on PREformances really was a great chance to work out some of the kinks, and the emotions associated with that piece were so overwhelming. But it really is a great opportunity.
Jason, that's the thing that an audience, I think it's helpful for an audience to understand, is that no matter how many times we practice, no matter how many times we rehearse, the one thing that you cannot replicate is that adrenaline rush, that sense of energy that happens between you and the audience, caused by the audience. So the audience is a huge part in any performance, but certainly in a performance, the audience really has a job to play, in that they are helping us figure out where the problems are. And I think, I'm sure you've had the same experience that I have, that sometimes as an artist, you go in worried about one specific spot, and it turns out that's not the part with the problem at all.
It never is, right?
And until you get it up on its feet and in front of real people with real energy that they're giving back to you, it's very hard to predict.
It's funny, as performers, the things we worry about, we spend so much time solving, that when we get in front of the audience, that usually is what comes together beautifully. And then whatever the challenge is, may be something we never even anticipated, because it may be in the moment it was something unique.
For sure. You asked me about the artists on PREformances. I'm sure that I've had, well over, I think, 125 guest artists. So it'd be hard for me, as I age every minute, to remember them all.
You have a wonderful website. On the website, I see there's you have all the singers identified, you have all the conductors, the composers, the poets, the actors. So I encourage people on the call who may not be familiar with the series to go on there and look at the wonderful breadth of talent and careers that are on there. It's wonderful.
Memory there, but PREformances is the website, and you'll find information there about Jason and my dad, Jordan Charney. And Jason, I think you actually came to the JCC when PREformances was at the JCC, when I had a full orchestra on stage, which was quite a challenge in that space. And that was because my friend, the great conductor Alan Gilbert, came to PREformances, and he conducted both me and his wife, Kaisa William Olson, brilliant cellist. She was preparing for something else, and he agreed to gather this orchestra and get us through some music, some Beethoven for me. Kelly Hall-Tompkins is one of my most beloved guest artists, a brilliant violinist who has created quite a career for herself.
She certainly has.
Yeah,
following
that's
her.
for
She's
sure.
been, I think she's teaching on the faculty of Manhattan School of Music now too. I saw that. I was very delighted to see that as well.
I think so. And one of the things that she's done is she has commissioned this brand new piece, which is a composite song cycle called Forgotten Voices. It's quite something, and you should definitely look it up. And I'm singing some of the songs on that cycle, and we were supposed to have the premiere at Carnegie Hall this past spring. Rats.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
But hopefully, oh well. Given the scope of things, that's a disappointment I can handle.
We've all
but hopefully
we've all seen so much transition with the COVID era thrust upon us. So tell me your innovation. You've been doing a very innovative season this year for I guess necessity is the mother of invention. So tell us about how you've transitioned your season of hope this season.
Well, to tell you the truth, it really came out of, I guess, necessity. And also, I was feeling really stuck and a little hopeless about the state of the world, about thinking about health and safety and justice. And everything was feeling really grim. And I wondered if making music was anything that needed to be happening, honestly, right now. And at first I thought no. I thought it was sort of superfluous. And then I always go back to this quote of Thoreau from Walden that I learned in junior year English 100 years ago. And I can't not think of it. And he said, if we respected only what is inevitable and has a right to be, music and poetry would resound along the streets. And I think about that a lot. And I thought about it and I thought, I really could help make music and poetry resound along the streets. And maybe everybody needs to take a breath every once in a while. And maybe we as musicians and artists can provide people a moment to just feel what they want to feel and take a deep breath and have just or 30 to sit and listen to great musicians. And so I decided to call on my friends and see if maybe they'd be willing to give it a go with me. And really thus was born PREformances Season of Hope.
That's beautiful. And so tell me what that's been like. How do you change a platform like that from one into the other?
Well, as you well know, it is so hard to make music together with anybody else in this virtual world because there is so far no platform on which you can make synchronized music happen with somebody else. So there are all these cool videos going on, and you make a lot of them with your choir, where it looks like everybody's making music at the same time, but really everybody just made their own little part in their own little room with their own microphone, listening to the music in their headphones, and then some magical technical wizard puts it all together. In my case, the magical technical wizard is my 15-year-old son. He's my handy editor.
It certainly helps having some very tech-savvy young people around. I can vouch for that.
No kidding. Tech-savvy young people with a lot of hands right now.
I think we all have free time on our hands these days, don't we?
Yeah, that's for sure. So, it is certainly an incredible challenge. It would be one thing to have, let's say, a pianist who happened to be home in front of with their piano, and they could play piano for us and film themselves, and then I could talk about that and show it. But instead, what I'm doing is working with the pianist. So the pianist will play and then I'll sing with the pianist. Or in case of the last episode, there was my trio, the ARC trio with Kaisa William Olson, whom I mentioned, and Reiko Uchida. And in the next episode, the cellist Peter Seidenberg is going to play. That'll premiere this coming Thursday. And, again, he could have played solo cello, and he is playing a little bit of solo cello, but we also had this bright idea that we were going to do a bunch of stuff together. And with Craig Ketter, the official collaborative pianist of PREformances.
All around great guy.
And boy,
great guy, great artist.
Oh my God, the very, and actually he says to say hello to you. I mentioned to him that I was going to be talking to you tonight. So he did ask me to send his fondest regards.
Craig Ketter, I will be calling you to be on the show sooner or later. Don't worry.
Yeah, for sure. He'd be great to have on. He's such a joy to be around, virtually or not. Anyway, so, to put all the pieces together and to try to have this, as we mentioned at the beginning, this collaborative relationship that you're really kind of having just on your own in your own little box, is sure challenging.
So with these great artists, you're recording it separately. How are you preparing the guide tracks? Are you using metronome markings? I mean, I found in my doing of these, I've been doing large choral projects with mostly avocational singers, maybe some of my staff, but it's been such a challenge to because everyone has a slightly different interpretation, and rubato is really a challenge on these recordings. What have you found?
That's the thing. I was trying to explain to a non-musician the other day that something may be written in 4/4, which means there are 4 beats in a measure, and every note gets one beat, every quarter note gets a beat, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. But let's say because of the word, thank you, you're conducting me in 4. Although you could conduct me in 4, and I wouldn't be able to talk at the same 4 because we can't do it together,
the
right?
The issues make it impossible.
Yeah, just impossible. Which is why sometimes we're talking on top of each other, because it's just the sound isn't the same, right? It's not that we're being rude to one another, but we just don't hear it at the same time. Yeah. So anyway, when you're counting in 4, and then you're also adding, let's say, words in 4, and let's say you want to say, I talk to Jason, right? I talk to Jason. Let's say I want to emphasize talk. I talk to Jason. And I can still get in the same amount of time. So my measure still is this big, right? But what I do to get from this finger to this finger is the magic. And the humanity is in between these 2 points. And so to have a click and to have it be exactly does sort of it steals a little bit from the humanity of it. And so the trick is to infuse the humanity back in this virtual way, because, in order for it to sound right, it really does have to fit in this, in this little spot, right? So some of the artists that I've worked with want to have metronome markings, and we just stick to that. In general, I've been sort of doing an N+1 where somebody just goes first, and then the second person goes on top of that, and then the third person goes on top of that, and then we go back to the first person, and the first person does it again with parts 2 and 3 in their ear. So that's how I've mostly been doing it.
Interesting. Yeah, everyone does it a little bit differently. It's good to hear. And I've heard a few of your projects. We played one at the beginning. We're going to play some at the end as well, so people can hear what these projects are like. And it's such an interesting adjustment for artists. I know my staff here at Ocean Grove. They get the guide track, they submit, and I have to go through them. And it's just so interesting to hear how slightly different everyone's sense of tempo is too, as we're syncing it together. Have you had any challenges syncing these recordings?
Oh, yes. That's a nonstop
I'm glad
challenge.
to hear it's not just me.
Oh, no, gosh, no. And, when you say that everybody has a different interpretation of tempo, which is just the speed of the piece, the rate at which it goes, because a piece could be marked, let's say, happy as the tempo, right? Or lively, or walking. What does that mean? My walking tempo is very different from your walking tempo, or my 15-year-old's tempo, or my father's tempo of walking, right? And just in general, I think anybody has had the experience of having a conversation with somebody where you feel entirely sure that you communicated your point to that person. You're absolutely sure that what you said was crystal clear, and somehow they walk away with a different understanding. And so it's the same thing with tempo. You could both think that you're in the same world of speed and sound and rate, and it's just not quite the same. And live, you can compensate for that, and you can hear each other and see each other breathe and see the strings. And, it's just, you have so many more senses available to you when you're together in person. And you also have the great luxury of rehearsing together, which which really helps.
Boy, do I miss that part of the music making process. I'm used to having, during the year, I have like 8 standing rehearsals plus anything else I'm guest conducting, I'm working on. So then all of a sudden to go to 0 was such a crashing shock to me. And I think we all dealt with that in different ways. I started a podcast as my therapy. I guess that's been part of that for me, is to bring great artists like yourself on here to talk about these things, because I think we're all suffering in silence in a way, and I think it's just great for us as a community to come together and bring these up.
Well, for sure, the interview section of PREformances Season of Hope has been such a pleasure, because I get to visit with these great artists, many of whom are my dear friends, and we're sort of forced to, have a Zoom call together, which has been a real icing on the cake for me. Silver lining, #silver lining.
Well, there's always silver linings, and we do serve communities. Like, you serve a very important community of artists and audience members, and by you doing this virtual platform, you feed the souls of these people. It's very important, and I think it's so that artists are taking that risk, learning new technology, embracing new platforms. I think it's critical now, as we have no or very little live music.
Yeah, I guess everybody just has to do their little piece. And I do think, there's so much talk about what's essential these days. And, never before have I been so grateful for the UPS truck driver, for example, and the garbage collector, and the people who are working at Amazon, and, the people who are doing that kind of work that is enabling me to be safe and make music. I'm so profoundly grateful, and recognize every second of this just how lucky I am in all of this. But then, you just wonder what are the other essentials, and is having art in life, is that a luxury or is it an essential? And I do think everybody needs to have just a piece of beauty and art and music, whatever type of art it is, in their life. And so, if I can help bring a little bit of that, then that's great. And it has been rewarding seeing people's comments on these chats, and getting emails from people, and seeing how many hits there have been, or likes there have been, or what do you say on your show? Hit the button, hit the bell, hit the bell. And it's thousands and thousands of people now who have watched some of these Season of Hope videos. So I have to feel that, I don't know, that's proof in the pudding, right? That people are in fact watching, and I hope they're getting something out of it. And I certainly know that the musicians are getting a lot out of being able to make music. It is, it's such a loss not to be able to do it. And certainly for a singer, when I don't have an instrument that lives outside of me. I am my instrument, and to silence it is really hard.
We've had a lot of singers on the program so far, and just to talk about the some of them have been on your show as well as some have been on your platform. And like Alok Kumar, for example, was on here and talking about he had 3 major performances at the Metropolitan Opera coming up, all canceled. And just, he's worked so hard over the last couple of years and built his career. And to watch all of us have that similar, you were in Carnegie Hall, you were supposed to be doing a concert. I was supposed to be in...
That was going to be my debut, my Carnegie Hall debut.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Rats.
It'll happen again. It will happen again. I was supposed to be in Prague and Vienna with different orchestras making my debut, and here we are. We're having this wonderful conversation, and but we're keeping our communities alive. We're keeping ourselves in the arts, and I think it's so important that all of us as artistic community come together and find the way to keep us engaged. Reach out to your friends, reach out to your colleagues, because so many of us are lacking that connection. And I think it's so important that we find a way to keep our communities engaged.
I do think especially singers are going to have a long haul here, as these horrible stories about the virus spreading in choir settings and the aerosols that come shooting out of our mouths when we sing. I think it's a long time.
That are enhanced by the training that you've undergone, that go even farther, because you're an opera singer and you have learned how to maximize your breath stream and your dynamics.
Yeah. To get that sound, classical music singers sing without any amplification. So to get up and over that big orchestra and into the big audience, I've never really thought about it in terms of aerosol spray, but
who would have thought?
But apparently, yeah, there's an awful lot of that. So I think that singers in particular need to reinvent and pivot and come sing on PREformances Season of Hope.
Well, everyone should be watching that, to check it out, to see what you're doing, to watch your great artists. And we have our first question from the audience. We have Jenny from Jacksonville, Florida, who asks, which of your projects has been your favorite so far, the virtual projects you've done with colleagues? Have there been some that have been particularly engaging to you?
You know, that's sort of like asking which one is my favorite child. And I can tell you the answer to that is I have room in my heart for both of my children, and it's equal. So I don't know. And I honestly, I mean, truly, I don't know if I could pick a favorite. I think right now I'm working on the next episode, which is coming up. And I've had this really fascinating experience with Peter Seidenberg and Craig Hedder, putting together this piece called Kaddish by Mariana Rosette. It's a heart-wrenching piece that she wrote. It's part of a larger cycle called Ghost Brothers, and it's really her story, having been born to parents who were Holocaust survivors. She was born right after the war, and she was part of a generation born in Europe whose parents sort of started over. In other words, they lost their first spouse and children who were killed in the Holocaust. And then they immediately started again and never spoke about what had come before. And so these children who grew up had this weird idea of, you know, like they would see family pictures and they'd see a young child who kind of looked like them and they didn't know who it was. It turns out it was a half sibling. And so Mariana Rosette refers to those siblings as ghost siblings or ghost brothers. And she tells this unbelievable story that is really encapsulated in this one piece, Kaddish. And Jason, we were talking earlier about how we work this synchronicity and latency in the platform. And I told you that what I have been doing is one person goes, then two, then three, and then back to one. And in this piece, we were not successful at that. It was as if nobody could go first because each of the three of us needed the other two so desperately. Wow. Through the whole piece. There was no way to make it happen without each other. And so we had to, it was like 100 times to make it so that we could always have each other present, because this piece is such an intricate collaboration in every measure. So I guess my answer, just because I'm so obsessed with that piece right now, is that I'm awfully excited to show everybody how that's turned out.
It's wild with these virtual projects. I know it takes us. I'm doing a huge collection of weekly virtual choir projects at Ocean Grove this summer, and we literally have between 60 to 80 people submitting each project every week. So we have all this data coming, and my son does all the editing and does all the data part of it. But then we sit together and we make it sound like a chorus. I have to edit with him, and I put it together, and it's just amazing how much time. When I listen to the projects now after the fact, it's amazing to see the faces on the screen and to remember how it takes us 15 hours for each week to do these.
Yeah, that makes me a little bit worried because so this is episode 4 coming up on my series. Episode 6 is my featured guest artist is the pianist Donna Wang Friedman. And we, in celebration of the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote, and also the 55th anniversary of the signing into law of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, we are performing together a bunch of stuff, and one of the pieces involves a chorus. And we have yet to really put it together. We're just getting the submissions in now, but I'm crossing my fingers that we can, with my brilliant son, my editor, that we can figure it out.
You've said that this is a chorus, but it's a chorus of wonderful opera singers who I know very well. So who are those choristers? Who are the singers, the rest of the chorus?
Joining me, I'll be singing, and Indira Mahajan, and Christy Swan, and Yuna Lee, and Marcia Thompson, and I think I forgot. Oh, Lena Chianakis.
We're going to call that a diva chorus. That's the dream chorus right there. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Please give Indira my best. We did Butterfly together a few seasons ago. She's wonderful.
I will. Yeah, I'm so excited to join voices with these amazing ladies. It's really such a privilege, such a privilege.
So what are you looking at for, so what do you think the next step is as we come out of this, or we start to, what do you think is going to be the next chapter for both music and for PREformances? What are you thinking about these days?
You know, I think one of the things that I've learned from all of this is to take things, be really present in the moment and not think too far ahead, because who knows what's around the corner. I am intrigued by this notion of just how many people seem to be watching these videos, how many views there are. And I would like to figure out how to keep those people in my life. And I know they're not all going to come to Merkin Hall, since they're all over the world. And so I'm sort of thinking about that in the back of my head, is how do we keep this audience that seems to be growing? How do we keep them with us? And how do we keep this relationship going? But other than that, I have to admit, I'm not thinking too far ahead these days, Jason.
You're in the moment. Well, I think we're all in the moment more than we've ever had to be, because we've had to rethink our entire, like the entire way that music is produced since the beginning of time, right? We've had to reinvent that almost on a dime and recreate that in our own individual way for our own individual platforms. And it's an enormous task. I know I'm trying to do the same thing with my university now, is applying virtual elements to a university curriculum, both orchestra and choral, which is taking up most of my free time now, is to figure out how to give my students the best educational use of this technology and to still provide, what we're to keep our communities together. And it's quite a challenge. And I think that we have to be there for them in so many new ways, but we will do it because that's what artists do.
That's what we do. We just keep making art somehow. Always tell people I don't know what else to do. That's all I've got. So
I think when the pandemic first hit and we started canceling rehearsals, it was like a domino effect. Up until the day of, I was supposed to, my last was an orchestra. I was supposed to do the triple concerto of Beethoven and two Beethoven programs, and they both got canceled like that. But I was ready. I was ready to go to rehearsal, and they canceled my final one. And it was like a dominoes. Then it took me a week of no rehearsals to say, no, I can't do this. I need to find something. Like, there's only so much gardening I can do and so much lawn work in my backyard in the suburbs that I can do. And then we said,
banana bread to be baked. There's only so much banana bread that can be baked.
That sounds pretty good, though, I got to tell you.
Banana blueberry bread. I really recommend it. That's been my favorite creation so far.
But we've discovered that, now it's time to get back to making art, get back to what we love, and to just find ways to share that. So I want to thank you so much for all you're doing, and encourage the audience to check out PREformances with Allison Charney, a innovator and a wonderful artistic soul and a great person. So make sure you check that out. Subscribe to her. Do you have a presence on YouTube? I know you're on.
Yeah, PREformances has a YouTube channel and a Facebook page. And if you go to the website, I think there are links everywhere to everything. There's an audio podcast. And if you just go to preformances.org, you can find links to everything. And Jason, I just want to thank you, for asking me to do this with you, and also for what you're doing, and what you always do. You are a bringer together of artists always in any platform, virtual or live. And it's such a pleasure to know that you've not stopped being true to yourself, which is to make music and to bring people together to help them make music. And I really appreciate you for it.
Thank you, Allison. I appreciate it. And I look forward to getting with you together soon and discuss collaborations and to get back on the live music in the future. So it's...
Yeah, once the aerosols don't come out.
We'll reinvent that next.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us for Music Matters 2020 and for our show today. Be sure you hit that subscribe button below and that bell button to give the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. Our next interview is on Tuesday, and we have, I believe, a really fascinating artist. Yes, we have Maya Hoover, who is a mezzo-soprano, and she's a professor at the University of Hawaii, so our first guest from the island of Hawaii, and a wonderful mezzo-soprano who has a very good academic career as well, and we're going to talk about about her combined life of music and academics, and how to meet the challenges of higher education in the future in the time of COVID. So be sure to check that out. And on Thursday, we have a sitar player who's a sitar player from Brooklyn, who's part of the Brooklyn Raga Massive, who has done incredible things to combine his Eastern and Western training in a unique fashion. And I'm calling that on creating a unique style. Also does overtone singing, so be sure you check that out. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and remember, keep music alive.